So if you were to bring the black share of wealth at least to the black share of the population, it would require an additional at least $10 trillion.
Welcome, everyone. How's everyone doing in the building?
Morning, family.
Good morning.
Morning, all.
Good morning. Well, we have ETMs in the building, so you know how we do. But before we go, we're going to have to do a little something here. So let's see what we can do. Man, we got a lot going on today, fam. We got a lot going on. But let's do this.
Dream is in the house.
Nice.
Dream Team is in the house, and we have a special guest, who's Kamilah Moore. How you doing, sis?
Good. How are you all doing this morning?
Doing well. So we are back in the building with the Dream Team, talking about economics and communications today.
Absolutely. Yes, it's going to be a good build, a good show. We're going to dive deep today and talk about economics and communications. We usually have most of the time we usually have like what I call if you want to say some kind of reverence to, our ancestors or some of our living legends. We usually have like a video or something that we usually play. One I think we had Neely Fuller on, but today I wanted to actually do a little something different, if y'all don't mind. I actually wanted us to give a shout out to Booker T. Washington, and I don't know if y'all could see this on the screen. Maybe if we can go around and each one of us read a quote from the great Booker T. Washington, and we just go around and say it, and I'll start off with it. And I don't know, Kim, if who else? Okay, so we have Kamilah, Chris, CO, Kim, and myself. Okay, so maybe I'll go first, and then Kim, if you want to go, then maybe CO, and then Chris, and then Kamilah. If y'all cool with that, reading the quotes. All right, cool.
Let's do
We'll
it.
do that. All right, so let's I guess I'll start first. Okay, on April 5th, 1856, Booker T. Washington was born. He's recognized as a great leader of the African American community, founder of Tuskegee University, a famous alumnus of Hampton University, and so much more. So I'll read the first quote from the great ancestor, Booker T. Washington. He says, "The happiest people are those who do the most for others. The most miserable are those who do the least."
Hear, hear. Number 2 says success is to be measured not so much by the position that one has reached in life as by the obstacles which he has overcome. Period.
I'll hop in with number 3. If you want to lift yourself up, lift up someone else.
Character, not circumstances, makes the man.
Opportunities never come a second time, nor do they wait for our leisure.
Associate yourself with people of good quality, for it is better to be alone than to be in bad company.
Excellence is to do a common thing in an uncommon way.
I like that one. Number 8, there are 2 ways of exerting one's strength. One is pushing down, the other is pushing up.
Those who are the happiest are those who do the most for others.
Yes. Egotism is the anesthetic that dulls the pain of stupidity.
Wow. The world cares very little what you or I know, but what it does care a great deal about what you do or I do.
In my contact with people, I find that as a rule, it is only the little narrow people who live for themselves, who never read good books, who do not travel, who never open up their souls in a way to permit them to come into contact with other souls, with the great outside world.
Deep. Number 13, we must reinforce argument with results.
There is no power on earth that can neutralize the influence of a high, simple, and useful life.
We should not permit our grievances to overshadow our opportunities.
Word up. It's very interesting. And Chris, man, I think you're in the wrong industry, bro. I think you need to be in voiceovers.
Side gig.
I'm in the reparations industry.
I'm feeling that one. Well, first of all, family, thank you for doing that. I'm sure Booker T. Washington is looking up or down at us. And, you know, with his presence is guiding us. It's and also interesting that, and I didn't even mean to actually have it in that way, but it's kind of interesting, right? How like I started and ended it with Kamilah like that, right? The 15 ancestors work in a very mysterious way sometimes, right? All right, so before we go on, Kamilah, I know a lot of people know about you already, but do you want to give the people just a little something about yourself, and then we'll continue on with the program?
Yes, sure. So my name's Kamilah Moore, and I am the current the chairperson of the California Reparations Task Force, and I'm from Mert Park, Los Angeles originally, and yeah, I think that's good for now.
All right. So let's kind of we won't get into the main 2 topics today. I kind of wanted to get in some other things, get everybody's opinion on let's see, Johnny Depp. So the question is he eligible for reparations? It looks like he does have an ancestor who was enslaved in this country, according to his genealogy. So I just wanted to kind of go around the room to see, and in the chat, see what y'all think about this, because I know, you know, we have this eligibility requirement currently in the California Reparations Task Force. So I just kind of want to get everybody's opinion on this.
Yo, can you put that slide back up? I didn't see. I couldn't read the whole thing.
You want me to read a little bit of it?
Yeah. Give me.
All right,
give me some.
All right, so let's get into a little bit. So Johnny is descended from a woman, Martha, who born in 1612 and who was of African descent. Martha had a daughter, Elizabeth Key, also an ancestor of Johnny. Elizabeth's father, William Grinstead, was Caucasian of English descent. Elizabeth was the first woman of African ancestry to successfully take legal action to free herself from slavery. This happened in 1656. Johnny is descended from Martha twice on one family tree. She is both one of his 8 times great-grandmothers and one of his 9 times great-grandmothers. That would mean that Johnny is of 3/204 African descent. Anybody want to take this one?
I do.
Go for it.
Oh, who
Go
is
ahead,
that?
Chris.
CEO?
Yeah, go for it. I'll follow up afterwards.
Yeah, I'm gonna say no. I'm gonna say no, and the reason I'm gonna say no is that, so yeah, he has. It looks like, or it sounds like he has someone who was. I mean, does it say this person was enslaved? I'm not sure. Does it say this person was enslaved? I'm not sure. The person who was of African descent, I'm not sure if it says that. Maybe it does. Oh, yep, there it is right there. Take legal action to free yourself from slavery. So I'm gonna say no, and the reason I'm gonna say no is because even though he has this one person who was someone who was enslaved in his ancestry, we don't have the full details yet of how the Reparations Commission's eligibility standard will be actually implemented. And so what I expect is that there will be, and I'm just brainstorming here, which I'm just thinking out loud with y'all. What I do expect is that there's gonna be a piece on top of the lineage eligibility that actually makes it so that people who are currently identifying as African American or Black or whatever it is at the time when we get to this are the people who we are actually getting reparations to. So even though he has that requirement of his lineage, or someone in his lineage who was enslaved in this country by this country, when the full details get out, when we actually talk about how we actually implement the eligibility criteria that the commission voted for back in March, I think there's going to be pieces on top of that make sure that we are talking specifically about African Americans or people who identify as African Americans or Black, and that is not Johnny Depp. I'm 1,000% positive Johnny Depp does not identify as somebody who's Black / African American.
Yeah.
Right now.
Chris took the words right out of my mouth. Don't want to speak for the task force because they haven't done that work yet. They haven't gotten to that point as yet. However, Johnny Depp, I'm sure, on the last census, and his mama, his grandmama on the last census, and just on government documentation, isn't identifying as Black or African American. He is not subject to the treatment, the rules and regulations that continue to oppress us. He is not living that life or walking those steps. So simply having I don't have it in front of me, but like 6 times, 8 times, 9 times in the past, having an individual who was connected to slavery, it has to be more than that.
Yo, can I say one more thing too? So real quick, just to follow up. So the question, so this might beg the question, well, how is this not like a racial standard, right? Like, or how does that like bring in like a racial standard? So I want to actually go to something that the Supreme Court actually says about this. And this is why when the Supreme Court rules on the affirmative action case, I think it's looking at now, I think it's going to be very, very important, because right now the Supreme Court, I think, and the courts and the law itself allows, for example, if we're looking at like specifically college admissions, the Supreme Court allows race to be one of the criteria that folks use, not the criteria. So if you have the criteria as lineage, like that's the bottom base, but then if you have on top of that other things, potentially even a racial standard, that is I think not violating the Constitution, at least as how the Supreme Court has interpreted the law now. So even though he has that lineage, again, we don't have the specific details of how we're going to implement it, but it's not specifically wrong to say, okay, have this lineage, and then we use other things like race specifically as a way, or whether or not you identify as some Black or African American group as part of what other pieces that you have to be part of to qualify for reparations. So because I know that probably like beg the question, like, all right, how is this not like a racial standard too? But again, the Supreme Court right now does allow race to be one of the criteria for different types of government programs, just not the criteria.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. And I'll just qualify my statements by saying, I am the official spokesperson of the task force, but in these types of interviews, I speak for myself and as an individual. And I just want to concur with everything that Chris and CO just said. And we'll see, right? Because yes, in March, right, the task force made a historic decision in defining the community of eligibility by a lineage-based standard. So if you can trace your lineage, if you are an African American who is a descendant of a chattel enslaved person, or you can trace your lineage to a free Black person living here in the United States prior to the 19th century or 1900, then you would be eligible. And so moving forward, may that lineage standard be refined in the ways that Chris and CO elucidated, potentially. So we'll see. Mm-hmm.
All right. Kim, you have something to say, or should we move on?
Well, I mean, I'll just say that I agree. It depends on what the other variables are going to be in addition to the lineage-based standard. But I will say that he's going to need them after Amber Heard gets nominated.
Yeah.
That's a different story.
Ooh, I know.
Yeah,
We're gonna have to do that in the news, man, because that's Johnny Depp's in some hot water, boy. Good luck, Johnny Depp, with that one.
I think
All
he's suing her right now, right? Like he's suing her for like defamation of character. Yeah, it's weird.
Oh no. The love triangle gets deep, man. Love triangle gets deep. All right, fam. So let's go on. So did y'all see Atlanta at all, the episode? No. Kamilah,
I still haven't seen it. I still haven't seen it.
Yeah.
I heard about
way
it.
behind.
Oh man. So Kim, I think you saw it, right?
Yeah, I saw it. So it's season 3, episode 4, Big Payback, and it's all about what reparations could look like. Not as enacted so much as on a federal level or on a state-based level, but on an individual level. So it was very interesting, finding the people who have caused you harm or, were former slave owners and going up to their descendants saying, hey, you owe me.
Yeah,
I thought it was an interesting way of looking at it, but we know that that's not how it's going to happen.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not going to give away any spoilers. If y'all haven't seen it, just watch it for yourself, for sure. But I'm going to just go ahead and read this article real quick. That was written by Vulture.com. It says, that's exactly what this episode of Atlanta does by showing us a place where the scales of racial, class, and economic fairness appear to be more balanced. For 36 minutes, the series dreams of the possibility that a new day could be born, but it also argues that we can't get there without walking through some profound discomfort. Ultimately, the Big Payback is asking all its viewers, but especially the white ones, if they're willing to remove their AirPods to hear what's being said by those around them and let it really, truly sink in. So yeah, I do highly recommend watching it. For those who haven't seen Atlanta or don't follow it, I'm just full disclosure, I don't watch the show, and that's the only reason why I went to go see the show was because of that episode. And I mean, for me, if people are into that, Atlanta, do your thing. But for me, I was just like, that's cool, So if you guys want to binge watch, Atlanta, do your thing. But for me, really and truly, you could just watch that one and keep it pushing. So, but yeah, I highly recommend. And CO, you said you haven't seen it, right?
No, I haven't seen that episode. I think I watched the first season of Atlanta and then haven't gone back. So I haven't seen this episode, nor am I up to date.
And Kamilah, you haven't seen the episode or watched the series at all?
No, I haven't seen the episode or watched the series. I heard about the episode though. But yeah.
Okay. All right, cool. So is that it, Kim, with that one, or?
I mean, yeah, pretty much. I mean, I just really thought it was interesting because it, is raising awareness on the reparations movement in the mainstream. So, we're having these discussions now. So, I do think that that's interesting. I mean, I don't know exactly how I felt about it, but it is raising awareness.
I think that's dope. I feel like we're starting a lot more of it in the mainstream, at the very least, even if it's not necessarily where we land on it, or the message that we would put out. Just the simple fact that it's becoming like household conversation, I think is dope.
So it's interesting because there were some comments that were made. Oh man. Okay, so this was in regards to the article that was written from vulture.com. So here's a couple of comments. Great recap, thanks. Someone else said the only ethnic group deserving of reparations, just called to say, Get your own casinos. Present time parables about ancient non-binding issues aren't why I enjoy Atlanta. Glad to tune in again when Earn and company return. Okay. Excellent analysis. Just one note. European racism isn't so unexpected to some. And then I think this is the last quote and comment. It says, this episode sounds like a liberal wet dream. I'm a second generation American and you'll get reparations over my dead body. And somebody responded, okay, have it your way. I thought that was kind of hilarious. I think Chris is back in the building. I think maybe when he gets his camera and stuff up, we'll put him back in. Oh, you know what? Let's add him back in right now.
Bring me back.
All right, so he's back.
Let's go.
Got Chris back in the building to do this. Oh, there you go, bro. All right. Yeah, a lot of stuff going on, family. A lot of stuff going on. So, I guess let's get into what we want to talk about. But before we do that, Kamilah, do you mind if we actually play some of your previous interviews from like MSNBC or ABC? Is that okay?
Yeah, that's fine with me.
All right, cool. Maybe you can kind of comment on those. We have an interview from MSNBC. I'll play this right now.
But you're saying race-based policies are deemed illegal, but this really isn't race-based, because my question to you wasn't why aren't all, like every single black person included. My question is specifically for people who have been here since enslavement, whose families were certainly harmed by policies like Jim Crow, like the war on drugs, et cetera. So, I don't know that including that group of people would necessarily be illegal, according to what you were saying.
Well, potentially it could, because a harms-based model, particularly in a multicultural California, would actually would allow for other non-people of color to actually be included. And so, again, race-based standards are illegal under constitutional law standards. And we're not saying that, we're not going to face some type of challenge, but a lineage-based approach would be the least likely to be challenged under constitutional law standards.
So yeah, Kamilah, can you kind of give us like a breakdown about the interview, kind of some of the questions that were asked, and kind of how the interview went, if that's okay?
Yeah, sure. I think that was the second of I think 3 or 4 questions, actually 3 questions that she asked me. And in hindsight, in looking back at their interview, I realized that she repeated the question. So her first question was, what about, Black people who were here, who were enslaved, who might have come from other parts of the country? And, I responded by saying what the task force decided in its 5-4 decision in terms of the lineage-based standard and, re-articulating the definition, right? You would be eligible if you can confirm that you're an African-American who descend from chattel slavery in this particular country, or a free Black person living in 1900. And then she just kind of switched gears, but didn't really switch gears, and kind of asked the same question. And so I was trying to move the conversation forward, and maybe I didn't necessarily directly answer or restate the definition for her. But yeah, essentially that was pretty much it. I think I don't know what was going on with that interview. Does anyone have any comments? I'm still kind of confused about it, to be quite honest.
All right, let's go this.
In 1,000 feet, use the right 2 lanes to turn right onto the I-5 North, State Highway 99 ramp to Redding, Yuba City.
So that's just want to say one thing real quick. Yeah, I mean, so that interview's old now, right? But it was just a question about like the harm. Like, okay,
use the right 2 lanes to enter the I-5 ramp.
People who are who have been harmed. Basically, that was the
quarter miles I-5 to I-5
that
North.
Didn't make no sense. It was like, well, this is about Black people who have been harmed. This is about like people who descend from U.S. slavery. So the question was, it was a little bit like the question was confusing, and so I think Camilla was right. Once you say just harm only, then you're talking about people who are not Black, and so why were we talking about reparations for people who are not Black? So that was the only thing I wanted to add.
All right, though. Let's go
And
to
like Chris said, that was an older interview, so that was like pretty much right after the lineage criteria was set, that they were still talking about it. Now that it's kind of been set for a while and you're still doing your interview rounds, has that kind of question on lineage died down at all? Are people starting to get it?
Yeah, I think so. I think people are starting to get it, for sure. I think there's still more work to be done, and that's part of the communications conversation around, getting the messaging out, about how that was, the right decision, not only morally but also legally. There's still more work to be done, on that end, I think. And just to be clear, I want to say, like, she kept saying, okay, what if they were enslaved? And, well, if they were enslaved here and they're Black, they're going to get reparations. So I don't know what that was about again.
Right. But what time period was she talking about? Because people weren't immigrating into slavery.
Yeah, that was another thing. She said, hate 1800s, enslaved. I mean, if you're talking about, the domestic slave trade or inter-American slave trade, if those people, settled here as enslaved people and had progeny, yeah, their progeny would be eligible. But to your point, right, it seemed like she came up with a hypothetical scenario.
Yeah.
Yeah, I feel like it just goes to show how much education is needed for the general public. Even folks who are working in media and in communication, they need that information as well.
All right, let's go to another interview here.
Chairperson of the California Reparations Task Force, Kamilah Moore, joins me now with a little bit more on all of this. Kamilah, thank you for being here. I know that California is the only state in the U.S. to move ahead with a study and a plan for reparations like this. So how has this process been to try to figure this all out?
Hi, thank you for having me. We started the California Reparations Task Force meeting in June of last year. And since June, we've held a series of virtual public hearings on a variety of topics, but starting with the transatlantic slave trade, to the institution of slavery, to more contemporary harms against African Americans in California and the United States more broadly, around predatory lending practices, environmental racism in banking, tax, and labor, amongst other issues as well. And so we've had an ongoing conversation about who should be eligible for reparations, and we finally resolved that question yesterday afternoon.
Now, what were some of the key issues that you faced during all these ongoing discussions and debates?
Right. And so the framing around the community of eligibility to the task force was around, should it be race-based, so all Black Californians, regardless of national or even immigrant origin, or should it be lineage-based, so where you can, trace your ancestry to an enslaved or free African-American person who was living in the United States prior to the 19th century. And so there were amazing arguments on both sides. But 5 task force members decided, along with myself, that a lineage-based approach would be most apt.
So, Kamilah, how significant do you think was, one, the creation of this task force and finally reaching this decision?
Well, I think, of course, it's history in the making, and it's a long time coming. The history of lineage-based reparations advocacy literally starts during enslavement, with Belinda Sutton and Callie House, who were one of the first African-American women to advocate for reparations for ex-slaves, to Queen Mother Audley Moore in the 1960s and the Black Panther Party, who also fought for reparations in their platforms, to grassroots activists today, who were responsible for the enactment of AB 3121, along with Secretary of State Shirley Weber, and of course, California Governor Gavin Newsom.
So why do you think these reparations, one, why are they necessary? And what will this compensation look like? Will these be cash payments or will it come in other forms?
So the task force still has to decide what forms of compensation would look like. And we've actually hired an economic consultant team that includes Dr. Sandy Darity, William Spriggs, and other economists to help the task force crunch the numbers essentially in terms of what compensation could look like. And to your point about why reparations is important, we know that slaves were promised 40 acres and a mule, and that was rescinded due to discrimination. And so, reparations is about accounting for that broken promise of reconstruction and repairing the transferred harms to the direct descendants of those enslaved people.
And I know this is a really complicated question, but as best as you can sum it up, how did you link those wrongs with how they're impacting people still today?
Well, that's a really good question. Because in the statute itself, AB 3121, it mandates the task force to study and develop reparations proposals on the lingering negative effects of slavery against a particular group of people, and that being freed African slaves and their descendants. So there are many different lingering or badges and incidents of slavery, like homelessness, like mass incarceration, amongst many other factors that are still a badge and incident of slavery in 2022 that has to be eradicated in order for true equity to be achieved. And so that's the historic task that we have as a 9-member task force.
All right, Kamilah Moore, thank you for your time today. We appreciate it.
All right. Well, Kamilah, you want to say something, Chris?
I was saying great work.
Great work.
I was about to echo that myself. Like, that was a clear and concise way to articulate what is going on, what is happening. I felt like it was a good rally or ping pong back and forth between Kamilah as well as I forgot the woman's name at this point, but the mediator person who was asking the questions and having the conversation. So I appreciated that spot.
Thank you. That is how an interview is supposed to be done. That was a great interview.
Well, Kamilah, we're so proud of you. We can't say that enough. You're just doing great work. You're representing the community and the task force. So wonderful. As a matter of fact, we got to do this. And that's really hard to get, believe it or not. So if you get that firebomb, you on fire. So you're doing great work. We really appreciate you.
Thank you all.
So everyone, since we definitely have Kamilah in the building, you can give us a call. Kim, do you mind putting up the okay, we have the crawler on the bottom. And I think do we have the yeah, let's put this up too, just real quick. Yeah, call in 720-740-9699. Hit that access code 657-2569. That's 720-740-9699. Hit that access code 657-2569. All right, so I guess let's talk about the communications. Maybe I don't want to call it a debacle, but man, that's kind of how it's been so far, right? Let's just say the challenges I think that we've all had in terms of trying to disseminate this information regarding reparations. Let's go ahead and read an article and then play a video and then get into the communications scenario that's happening right now. Let's see. I'm trying to look for that article. Let's see. Here we go. Okay. And shout out to Tony Harvey. He's the one who took this picture at the Reparations Task Force meeting that happened on the 13th and 14th. So Senator Stephen Bradford summed up what he viewed as the reason for low turnout and public engagement at the 9th meeting of the California Task Force to study and develop reparations proposals for African Americans. Rudimentary basic communications of alerting the community about meetings must be mandatory. That's the part where we failed. We have a great story to tell, but we are not telling it. Bradford said April 14th during the second session of the two-day meeting. Frankly, I thought we'd have standing room only those 2 days. I thought everybody in California wanted to be here. I think we missed the mark in promoting the first in-person meeting. That's where the frustration is and where it is with me. For nearly 2 hours at the meeting, the panel discussed challenges it has experienced with the contracted communications teams, the Ralph J. Bunche Center for African American Studies at the University of California, Los Angeles, Young Communications Group, a Los Angeles-based PR firm, and AB Partners, a national social impact firm, were contracted to run the task force communication shop through the California Department of Justice. Concerns about the Bunche Center and two communication firms were related to 7 anchor organizations charged with conducting community listening sessions. Aside from the task force meetings, the anchor organizations are responsible for hosting public engagement sessions in April, May, and June. Grills, a professor of psychology at Loyola Marymount University, defended the Bunche Center, citing unique structural challenges hindering the organization because it functions under the umbrella state government. Grill said those problems delayed the center from performing its duties, although it was operating at warp speed to make good on deliverables. The bottom line Grill shared is that the Bunche Center has to abide by UCLA's snail-paced process of handling contracts. The staff at the center missed 2 important deliverables in January and February, waiting for green lights from higher-ups. The approval process is not under the purveyance of the Bunche Center, Grill said. We must understand that UCLA is a high-level bureaucracy of the state of California, which means that nothing happens quickly. All right. Do we have a video? And then we'll make some comments. I think we have a video somewhere now. All right. I think it's here. I'll go ahead and play it. Here we go.
When she's meeting with them, that's the Bunche Center.
Right.
So that has been happening.
Okay, great. So my last question is about.
I couldn't make out all of that, but I failed to mention the sub-meetings that take place too, that plan for the specific project facilitation and logistical support for the committee listening sessions too.
Okay, great. Thank you so much, Member Grills, Professor Stoll. My last question is about if you are able to provide an update on the Tier 2 organizations.
That depends
I'm
on.
sorry, I was not. Was that a question that was addressed to me? If so, yeah. I was not able to make that up. I couldn't understand.
Well, Member Grills will answer. Or Tier 2 organizations.
Right. So there's no contracting directly with the Tier 2 organization. It is totally up to each anchor organization to decide who and how many of the folks within their network they want to enlist as a Tier 2 organization. And then it is up to each anchor organization to determine what resources their network members need to support their outreach and implementation of a listening session. Because of the complications or how complicated it is to do any contracting through the UC system, there is no way we want to encumber things with a Tier 2 organization trying to be set up as a vendor. What will happen and what we're trying to make sure can happen is that an anchor organization can receive the resources needed. They have to specify who for what, to what end. And then, so it may be that a Tier 2 organization is going to do this massive leaflet.
All right. So I had a couple videos actually queued up, but in the sake of time, I guess we're just kind of going ahead and kind of get down to it. So, Kamilah, so based on what we saw and kind of the feedback from the community and the task force, can you kind of explain? I guess there was some conversation about actually having a separate subcommittee to overseeing kind of the community engagement process. Can you kind of elaborate on that, please?
Yes. So at the April meeting, the task force voted to establish a advisory committee that comprised of myself and member Grills. And our task is to verbatim develop and implement a communication strategy. So that's our broad task. The context to which that task arose, right, came from, one of the communication firms, AB Partners, resigning, and the other, Young Communications, being on the fence, based on a perceived notion of no confidence, based on a conversation that was had at the March hearing, where I brought, to the table my concerns about, a urgent or publicized as urgent advisory meeting that was coordinated by the two enlisted communication firms, AB Partners and Young Communications, where, I know many of your audience has already known this as your audience has followed along since the beginning, but essentially, that was a meeting where, it was advertised as authorized by the task force. Many of the task force members, like myself, didn't know about it until, the information, I think, was leaked to the public. And, at that meeting, it was advertised for an hour, ended up being 15 minutes. Wrong information was given out to the public. A lot of community members then immediately emailed the task force to express their extreme discontent with the meeting. Some people, miss work for that because of how it was advertised, and they were just very unhappy with the meeting and its outcome. And so, I brought that to the task force in terms of my concerns. Because in my understanding, when we were talking about the communication strategy and who we were enlisting, it was under my personal understanding that it would be the anchor organizations doing these types of listening sessions. And I forgot to add that this urgent advisory meeting was advertised to be a meeting on the question of who should be eligible for reparations, because at that time, the question was still undecided. And so, yeah, I'll just leave it there. There's a lot more I could say, but essentially the task now moving forward and being solution oriented is for me and member Grills to triage this situation and, to the headline, repair our communication strategy and develop and implement a new one.
Well, so what was that? That was the 9th meeting, correct? In San Francisco?
Yes.
And if I'm understanding, the task force has until currently next year to make the proposals. And if that's correct, logistically speaking, I mean, we're really far behind in terms of getting the word out about reparations. I mean, can it really realistically be turned around now to get the word out about reparations here in California?
Yes. So at this point, we have in June, it'll be a year left that we have in terms of the timeline. It's going to be hard, but I think it is doable. I think it's going to take this summer, a lot of work over the summer to get this communication strategy out. But yeah, we're very far behind. We're months behind, but it's okay, because everything happens for a reason. This is a learning lesson. I think this is something that I wanted to impart to the task force. We only have 2 years. This is not a lifetime type of thing, 5-year thing. We have to really take every single day, make sure we don't take every single day for granted. And so, yeah, moving forward, we're being solution oriented. We'll get it right. It's gonna happen. It's gonna be great.
Now, there were some deliverables that were supposed to happen. Can you talk about those? Some of those deliverables for the communication firms?
Yeah. So, for instance, the Bunn Center hired the communication firms through their vendor contract system. So, in total, right, the Bunn Center and the communication firms for our communication strategy, the DOJ has given out, well, not given out, but the contract is for $995,000 and some change. So just short of $1 million is what, the resources that we have, exported out to the Bunn Center and, these communication firms to do the work in, effectively communicating our report that's coming out in June, but then just also the larger messaging around the task force. To your point, what is reparations? What this historic decision that we made around lineage-based eligibility? The communication firms, were intended to be hired to, help us in that avenue. The Bunn Center, of course, is a facilitator and is working with the numerous anchor organizations that we've enlisted to also spread the word about the task force through primarily coordinated and organized community listening sessions. And so the deliverables in looking through more information, for instance, the Bunn Center had a deliverable for February 28th to create, a website that would be a landing page for our listening sessions. And then there was another deliverable that they missed that it's slipping my mind at this point, but it was a deliverable that was supposed to happen, I think, in January. It wasn't about the website, but it was about something else that was pretty important. Oh yeah, it was about making anchor organizations aware of the logistical support that the Bunn Center is mandated to provide by virtue of the contract. And so that, as for a short example, that includes letting anchor orgs know, okay, this is the types of support we're supposed to provide, and this is the money that we're supposed to help you get, and this is when you're going to get it. Just communication in that aspect, which I think from various feedback from various different organizations, anchor organizations, that didn't happen at that time.
Well, we know that AB Communication resigned. Is Young Communications, do we know if they're still involved with the process? Or is it still up in the air?
Still TBD.
Okay.
But I will say, speaking as an individual, this is me speaking as an individual, I think them not showing up at the March meeting, to me, is as an individual, right? I think is an example of being derelict in your duties, like not showing up at all. Because, I understand, well, no, I don't understand it. I just think that was a derelict in their duties, full stop. And I don't think it should have been on Member Grills to present on behalf of Young Communications. I think Young Communications should have presented for themselves and then answered to the community about that meeting that they held. Right? There's still no accountability, no answers about that as well, which I think is very problematic.
Great point.
Didn't they Young Communications say they declined to come because of possible hostile community? Is that why they didn't come? Because they thought people might be hostile towards them?
I thought it was cited not hostility from the community, but that the conversation that happened in March gave them the impression that there was no confidence in their abilities. So that aligns with my individual opinion that, okay, you're being derelict in your duties.
Yes, I agree. And then we have another common sense statement here from Marcus Champion. The Bureaucracy of the UC system means bunch centers shouldn't have been chosen, which is one thing Grills was just saying in the interview clip that we saw that, oh, there's so much bureaucracy. She's shifting all the blame back to the bunch center. Isn't she the one that pushed for the bunch center to be the fiduciary in the first place? Am I recalling this correctly?
Well, I mean, member Montgomery Stepp made a really good comment at the last hearing where she said when we initially had conversations about, utilizing resources for communications strategy and outreach, we initially thought about giving those resources to the community members, right? Like so they can go to the barbershops and the beauty shops and the places that we are to get the word out, right? That was initially the intention. I think that could still happen by virtue of the anchor organizations that we've enlisted. But yeah, it speaks to the point that was just raised by Marcus. I mean, yeah, I mean, if that was the initial intention, I think we're far from that intention by, reserving the resources primarily to the bunch center, who is wrapped up in red tape, bureaucratic tape.
And
If I
oh, go ahead, Sia.
Can I jump in on the red tape comment? I feel like that's a likely excuse. And I'm speaking as an individual who has worked on government projects, who has worked on private projects, and who for profit and for not for profit. All of them come with a level of red tape. All of them come with a level, and red tape is really just code for like the processes to get to what you want, whether it's getting a vendor onboarded so that they can be through the payment system, whether it is getting the NDAs signed so that you can start sharing sensitive information. It's all of that. I do not believe that the Bunch Center is working on a year-long process or has a process that takes almost a year long in order to onboard. That would not be reasonable for their market, like for them to make money, for them to operate as an organization. You may want it to take a week, but it takes a month and a half or it takes 2 months. That I understand. And that I have been through and get that. But I think even the reasoning that was put forth is unacceptable in itself. If that were the case, then that's what young communication should have brought to the meeting, or that's what Grills should have presented at the meeting. These are the processes and the policies that are in place that is leading to this, not just, oh, it's red tape. I expect more as a citizen, as an everyday individual who is invested in reparations and invested in seeing this come to fruition. I expect more because I know more exists. And so I want it. I doubt Young Communication works like this for all of their other projects. They wouldn't be a profitable business if they were.
And I was going to say the same thing. And I could have said this at the task force meeting, but, in terms of the profession that I'm in as a lawyer and in some of the past jobs I've had, I'm a transactional attorney by training. I deal with contracts. It's literally my bread and butter when I work at firms. And so this wouldn't cut it in a big law setting or in a law firm setting. You reach a contract. I mean,
exactly.
There's nothing. And so that's my concern is the even in a reparatory justice process where we're actively working to get reparations for the descendants, right? We're still having to go through discrimination or implicit, I think, biases that's rooted in our particular lineage, right? And just to be more clear about that, it's just why do we deserve this type of treatment? Why can't we get communication firms at the outset who know what they're doing, who are committed to the community, right? Why do we have to be relegated to subpar services? That wouldn't cut it in any other space, particularly in the space that I come from in terms of being a transactional attorney.
Yeah, excellent point. And just to, elaborate, if I'm correct, and I could be incorrect, I think so far, for the most part, they've all been virtual listening sessions. I think there might have been one in person. I was a little confused, so maybe we have to follow up with Dr. Grills and Michael stole on that.
Yeah,
I'm
so
sorry,
she
Kamilah, you want to say
conducted
something?
three listening sessions thus far. One was in person at African Black Coalition, but I think it was a paid event, so I don't know if that even necessarily counts. And then there were 2 others who were virtual. But I asked this at the task force meeting as well. Okay, where are the transcripts? And she stated the transcripts won't be on the website. But I think my larger question around that is that when we thought about and implemented anchor organizations who would create community listening sessions, the plan was for at least 1 to 2 task force members to be present if possible. And then for those transcripts to be given to task force members who weren't able to make it, so that we can understand what the community is saying at any given time about whatever the topic is concerning reparations, and that could potentially inform our decisions, right? That's not happening. So that's great. So I thought there was initially just 1 official community listening session. Okay, great. There's 3, but I don't know the contents of what happened in those 3 meetings. Like that's an issue.
Do you know if task force members attended or were even invited to these meetings? Did you receive an invite?
No, I didn't. No. Mm-mm.
Yeah, that's just a communication breakdown. Normally I'm pretty reserved in what I have to say, but I even had to speak up at the task force meeting, right? Just to say this is just abysmal. Like I've been involved in the media field for the past 18 to 20 years, and as I said before in my public statement, with Kim and I both, we have over or close to 50 years, 45 to 50 years experience. I've never been involved in a situation where, and I've worked with the largest, and I'm not going to disclose what company I used to work for, but I worked for the largest music company in the world, distribution. So, we have experiences, as Kamilah was saying. I was dealing with, agreements and contracts. And if there was breach, there was some form of accountability. And in this particular case, when we're trying to, as Kamilah was saying, descendants were trying to move the communications forward, it just seems like there's really no organized fashion in this process, which is kind of problematic. So hopefully we'll be able to recoup from this and really get the message out. I'm sorry, go ahead, Kamilah.
Yeah, there was another thing that was stated in the meeting, that we didn't enlist Young Communications and AV partners for publicity. We only enlisted them for strategic communications. And so what I got from that is that Member Groves was saying that we only enlisted these 2 organizations to help us with press, but not publicity. And I'm just going to put on the record that's not true, because I looked through the vendor contract. So not only do I have did I read the contract between the DOJ and the Bunch Center, but I also read the contract between the Bunch Center and the communications firms. And I'll just read a point where it says, Task 1, implement a comprehensive and strategic communications program following the roadmap established in the creative brief. But this will also entail securing radio sponsorships, negotiating and placing ad buys, implementing vigorous digital and social media activities, launching a strong earned media relations effort with a focus on garnering coverage in Black press, as well as first-tier non-ethnic media throughout the state. That sounds like publicity too, right? Or am I tripping? It sounds like it's a combination of strategic communications, but also publicity.
Yeah, there's a lot of things where the ball has been dropped. And so once again, you're having the grassroots movement, the people that have been involved with it. Once again, Black folks carrying this nation, and having to pick up this ball and running, but we're built for this. So speaking of live in-person sessions, CJEC, and also sponsored by ARCC, is having an event, and I don't know where Chris is at. Okay. I don't know if Chris, if you're still there, if you want to take this or not.
I'm here, bro.
All right, go ahead. Do your thing. Go ahead. Do your thing, bro.
I'll also want to talk a little bit too. So one to your point, can this be repaired? Absolutely. We got a whole year left. So absolutely 100%. We have plenty of time to get the communications right. Plenty of time, more than enough time actually. So to that question, absolutely 100%. And I like what Chair Moore is talking about being solutions oriented, about being forward looking actually, right? Because we have to talk about what things we're doing to go forward, right? We don't just want to talk about what the complications are. We also want to talk about on top of that, what are we doing to make changes going forward? What are we doing to get it right going forward, so to speak? And so I'm looking forward to what this new advisory group does, because I do think having more oversight from the commission, particularly with the chair and with Dr. Grill specifically focused on that, like having a specific group of people on the actual commission whose job it is to the communications piece is, I think, absolutely good. And I'm looking forward to the types of solutions that the chair and Dr. Grills actually come up with. But we do have to be forward looking, and we do have to be solutions oriented here too, right? It's also about, all right, what are the things that we doing that's going to make it better going forward? So what are the things that we doing, and what are the things that I do that's going to make it go better going forward? We want to be constructive in our critique here, and largely we have been. So speaking of that, as you rightly so, we have a listening session coming up on Saturday, May 28th. So this is a reparations listening session happening on Saturday, May 28th in Oakland from 1 p.m. to 4 p.m. You are invited. Those of y'all in the chat right now, y'all are invited. So yes, I'm talking to you right there in the chat. If you're in Oakland, if you're in the Bay Area, if you're in the Sacramento area and you can pull up and pull out there, come through. Right, it's not that far a drive. I'm coming down from Sacramento. I know the family here is going to be coming Sacramento also, Kim and Umoy and others as well. Saturday, May 28th, 1 p.m. to 4 p.m. at the California Ballroom. I'm going to mess up the address, but I'm going to read it so I don't mess it up. 1736 Franklin Street, Oakland, California, 1 p.m. to 4 p.m. Pull up. It's not going on in there. We got food. We got some raffles. We got reparations conversation. We got at least one reparations commission member already confirmed to be in the building. That's Dr. Javon Scott. We got some others that we're talking to now too. So stay tuned for that. We're going to have Samuel Brown of ACA3 fame. The brother who wrote ACA3 is going to be in the building talking about the ACA3 movement and the movement to end current slavery and current involuntary that goes on right now in California for those who are locked up and behind us. We got I actually had a conversation at the Reparations Commission hearing back in April with Kelly Parrish. Kelly Parrish, as y'all know, was one of the genealogists that actually talked and testified in March. So possibly, I haven't confirmed this yet with her yet, but possibly we will have Kelly Parrish in the building to talk about biology, how you trace your lineage. Stay tuned for more on that. And then also we're going to most likely have at least one more, or excuse me, at most one more California Reparations Commission member, because we can't have more than two in one place at the same time. So Saturday, May 28th, 1 p.m. to 4 p.m. Be there. You can also stream it live right now. There's a Eventbrite link. Hopefully some folks can put the link in the chat to the Eventbrite. If you go to @CJEC official on Twitter, I think it's the last post, and it's also on our Instagram, and it's also on our Facebook as well. So check it out. Saturday, I'm gonna say it the third, fourth, fifth time. Saturday, May 28th. Make sure you out there. Pull up. Again, live stream, but we definitely want to see you in person too. So pull up, be there.
All right, thanks for that, man, and thanks, CEO, for doing the flyer. You rocked it.
Whatever I can do that.
All right. I know we're a little bit over an hour. Kamilah, we really appreciate your time. So we're going to try to wrap it up, hopefully in about 10 minutes, if that's okay. I kind of wanted to talk to you about the economics part of this hearing, to say the least. I think we were a little confused. I think everybody was confused. So anyway, let's play this clip here. And yeah.
There's some kind of argumentation. And so for me, it was difficult to track what exactly the intention of their communication was just now.
So I asked them to summarize what we discussed last meeting. So essentially, their summary was essentially what was discussed in the last meeting. They had a presentation as well. I thought that they would use the same presentation to guide the discussion as they did in the last meeting, but there's no presentation. They just wanted to give a high-level summary without using the same aids that they used at the last meeting. So again, what they just stated is literally what they stated at the last meeting, which was introducing these two models: a national model for compensation for the community of eligibility and a state-specific harms model for compensation. And essentially what they just did was give a high-level summary of the national model and its implications, and then the state-specific harms model and its implications.
I have the PowerPoint from the last meeting open in front of me, and I still couldn't track it. So, because it sounded like at one point they were arguing, almost, why is California even doing this?
Yeah, yeah, I heard that.
And then the next thing I thought I was hearing was, it's not possible to calculate if we're using lineage-based. So then I'm scratching my head. So then I thought I was hearing something again. If I appreciate, and I think it is important for us to get their thinking post the last meeting, but just that oral presentation isn't allowing it to be absorbed in a way that we really know what we're hearing.
Okay, so there isn't any other action item for this agenda other than them giving a summary of what they presented at the last meeting, and then also having a potential conversation about whether we want to prioritize the harms for the state-specific model. So I'm not sure if, just to be solution-oriented, would you like the presentation that they presented last month to be on the screen for folks?
No, because I don't think that's going to clarify. I think that they added more thinking to what we heard last month, and I couldn't quite track what that latest thinking is saying. And it sounds like it's very, very important. So I just want to make sure that we are able to receive the information in a way that make sure we're understanding what they're saying. So to put the original framework, I said I had this up in front of me,
Right.
and that wasn't helping me to track. What are we at the bottom line? If we had to, your elevator version, what's the bottom line about the use of lineage based? What's the bottom line about California not being a state at the start of the national harm? What is the bottom line point about the ability to do a state reparations process when the monetary implications exceed what would be a state budget? So I think there are several things that they were saying. It's not about going back to the old PowerPoint. It's about understanding what's the bottom line on all the things that they were saying today.
Well, I will say, thank you so much, Member Girls. Thank you for that. When prepping for the meeting, I had a conversation with Professor Campbell and Professor Kramer, and it was just give a high-level summary of what we discussed, and then if there's any questions. But then we heard from Dr. Darity and Dr. Spriggs. I think they're the ones who introduced that new information about lineage and all the other stuff. I didn't have a conversation with these people, Spriggs or Darity. So they're introducing new information, and so I don't know where to go from here. To be quite honest, I could, you can have a conversation and ask some clarifying questions for Darity and Spriggs.
All right, I'm gonna play one more real quick, and then we'll get into the convo. Here we go.
In your recommendation, or your definition of the community of eligibility, you speak of African American. And so therefore you are, on the one hand, talking about race, but then you also are talking about lineage. It's not, what you all have laid out so far is not one or the other, but both. That's part of the complication.
Yeah, well, and then the further complication is associated with the idea that making a decision about eligibility necessarily makes a decision about what type of compensation should be forthcoming. Those are not necessarily issues that are resolved at the same time. And so we've been trying to say, given the community of eligibility that you've identified, here are two major strategies for trying to provide compensation. And one of those strategies, which we're calling the national model, is not something that can be implemented effectively at the state level, particularly if one is trying to accomplish the objective of doing the whole thing. If you make a decision that you only would like to do a partial active redress with respect to the differential in wealth, then certainly that's an option. But it would be helpful to us to know exactly what that percentage is and what is the motivation for selecting that particular percentage. Our feeling thus far is that type of an approach, assigning a monetary value that is linked in some way to the wealth gap, is something that is not really the best way to do it. And so that's why we have argued instead that there should be a focus on trying to do this from the standpoint of identifying a set of atrocities. If there is a concern that there are individuals who've been subjected to these atrocities who would have difficulty establishing that they have experienced such a harm, I think that would provide a basis for the task force, including a provision for a state-based agency to provide people with support in establishing their claim at no expense to them. So that potentially is another component of the project.
All right. So for those who didn't actually see the task force meeting, you can go check it out on our page. But Kamilah and or Chris or Kim or CL, can you guys give us your opinions to see if y'all understood from what the economists were saying, and are they actually convoluting the process more, or is the process just convoluted, period?
I think the process is convoluted, period. I think in hindsight, what I could have done in terms of framing the conversation better was just saying, at the last meeting, the task force decided, because we did decide, to endorse the state-specific harms model versus the national model. But there were, concerns or questions from the community about the implications of that decision. And so I had a meeting with Kramer and Professor Campbell and let them know about what I was hearing from the community, right, about the implications of the state-specific model versus the national model. Are you saying if we don't adopt the national model, then Black people won't, who are eligible aren't going to be able to get cash payments, or, so there was just some confusion around the implications of our decision in endorsing the state-specific model. And so part of that high-level summary, I think, was from Kramer and Campbell, was to kind of alleviate to the community any concerns about, the state-specific versus the national model. I think the negative implication was that by not endorsing the national model, there was this messaging out there that we thought that the state of California didn't have enough to pay those who are eligible for reparations in the term of compensation. And I think the high-level summary was supposed to alleviate that concern. By going with the state-specific model, we're not saying that California doesn't have enough. It's just, I think, in light with what I think Darity mainly, and to a certain extent Spriggs, was trying to say in terms of all these kind of unresolved questions, if a state endorsed a national model, that would leave us a lot of unresolved questions. And so in order, similar to going with the race-based versus lineage-based, like lineage is a more logical argument I think the high level summary was to show how the state model versus the national model would be the most logical way to go about things in this process.
You're on mute, Chris.
I'm on mute, then I'm on unmute. I was saying I agree with that. That's right. There was a little bit of confusion from what the economist was saying, but after some actual thought about what they were saying, it actually made a little bit more sense. And I'm not saying whether another made a little bit more sense, and that is this. I think Kamilah just said it right. The commission already decided that the state-specific atrocities harms way is the way that they want to go. So they already decided that. So that's already done. And then there's this list of 13 plus harms, and we have that. And then we also have a ranking of those harms. So I think that's the way that the commission is already going. And I think there are some good arguments for that. The question was, and I think this is partly a product of misreporting. I think there was a story that came out right after the March hearing about, and I think this was from I forget the source, if whether it was, well, I don't want to say the wrong source, but it was a media report that I think tried to summarize what the economists were saying in March, but it actually led to some misreporting. And I think the idea that misreporting put out is that you can't do direct compensation if you do the state way, and you can do it if you do the national way. That is the economists never said that. That was never part of the discussion. In fact, you can do from what I understand, direct financial compensation both ways. It's just a matter of what you're trying to accomplish with that direct financial compensation, and probably how much it is. But I think that was from misreporting. I think after the March meeting, what we heard from economists last month added some clarity, but then I think at some points it added less clarity too, because there are also other questions inside of this too. Like how do you deal the information that's missing, because we don't have this aggregated, delineated data. So like, how do we deal with that? How do the economists deal with that based on what they're being asked to do? They can actually deal with that because they're small people, they're economists, so they can actually deal with that. So I don't think that is going to be a big challenge, but it is something that they have to talk about and they have to consider. And so I think they also brought that up. So there was sort of like a few different things moving at the same time. But again, the commission decided on the state-specific atrocities model. That I think is something that, personally speaking, I actually am leaning more towards that now. Actually, at first I was like, let's just do the national model. I think actually the state-specific atrocities model is actually grown on me a little bit. And I actually have a space coming up today where I'm going to talk a little bit more about some of the pieces in here in detail, because, for example, in the national way, and I don't want to give my spaces away. By the way, spaces on Twitter, APM. Yeah. In the national way, we say something like the wealth gap is $350,000 in California. So every person who's eligible, every descendant, should receive something around $350,000 in financial value. Now, I'm going to mess the game up later tonight, because I'm going to tell you right now, talking about direct cash sounds like we talk income. Income is not the same thing as wealth. So nobody, or at least from what I understand, we're not saying that if everybody got a check for 350, that would close the racial wealth gap. That would not close the racial wealth gap, because income and wealth ain't the same. So we got to dig more deep into this, and this is what I'm gonna do later on today. But I think this was a part of the conversation that was going on in April, and there was some confusion because there was a lot of different things moving at the same time. But again, the commission already decided on the state-specific atrocities harm way, and then they decided to rank the different harms. I think that's what they're gonna continue to do. And we need to also get some more economists account of how do you put costs on these individual specific harms too. But that's one thing that I think we got to get on as we go forward.
Could it be a combination of both? I mean, a little bit of combination of both, the national plus state-based, or are we, have to go with the state-based because that's what's been decided by the task force?
I mean, that's already decided. So, I would say let's go with that. Let's actually work through that. I would, and again, I'm speaking personally here because I do think there are big risks if we try to. So we make the risks that we already are in bigger and more if we target the racial wealth gap. I think or target the national racial wealth gap. I think that is something that should be actually done by the national government. I actually agree with that. I think that's Dr. Darry's point. I also agree with Bill Spriggs too, because in that national way, if you just do that national thing, what we asking for is for the state of California to pay for things that the state of California did not do or could say it did not do, right? We have people who moved to California recently, and that's something.
All right, it looks like we losing everybody up in the house here. But see, my thing was just, California, I think California should be a trailblazing trendsetter in this reparations space. They could close the wealth gap and assess the harms as well.
It's interesting. And Kamilah and Chris was talking about that money.
That's money.
They had to cut them off because they was dropping some too much knowledge. It was like, no, they're dropping too much knowledge. We got to cut their feet. No, I'm just playing. Okay, we got Kamilah back in the building. All right, let's bring her back in. All right.
Looks like we lost Chris too, but I think we're about to pretty much wrap it up. My last question when you were frozen, Kamilah, was just if there would be a possibility for California to be a trailblazing trendsetter and kind of tackle the wealth gap in addition to harms based. Are we just regulated to harms based since that's what the task force has decided on?
No, that's a really great question. And I wanted to first talk about the harms that we sequenced because that's something I forgot to mention. So to Chris's point, we asked the economic consultant team to go back and start crunching the numbers and gathering the data for these particular harms. So houselessness, housing segregation, land loss through either eminent domain, I think white supremacist terror as well, and then also mass incarceration, police violence, health harms, and transgenerational or epigenetic health harms. So those are the harms that we didn't say we're prioritizing, but we asked the economic consultant team to sequence. And so that's where we are now. Our next meeting is September. Javon Scott Lewis and I are part of the economic advisory committee team. So we're going to be working with the economists between now and September to get a comprehensive update. And so if folks have any comments, suggestions, questions, definitely email the task force at reparationstaskforce@doj.gov. www.ca.gov, or you can reach out to Jovan and I on Twitter as well.
All right. Let's see here. Since we're almost wrapping up, yeah, family, we really need your help in this fight. If you can, we would greatly appreciate. We're gonna put up. We're almost close to 1,000 subs, fam. We're almost close to 1,000 subs. Please like, share, subscribe, share what we're doing. We're trying to give the community some good information. So once again, like, share, subscribe, hit us up, We're almost there. We're almost there. And also, Kamilah, you're going to be on, let's see, I think Politics in Black today. Yes. What time are you going to be on their show?
Like 4 o'clock. Yes.
4 o'clock. Now, do you know what y'all are going to be talking about?
Yes, so we're going to talk about the March and April hearings and the lineage vote, tackling questions around the models, essentially the same kind of conversation we had today. I'm also having a similar conversation with Politics in Black at 4.
Good. And I think Freeway Rick Ross is going to be on the program too. Do you know if you guys are going to be having in the same conversation, or is it going to be separate interviews?
No, I think it's going to be separate. I think I'm going to be in the studio, and I think they're taking him on Zoom. I think we'll see. I don't know.
Okay, yeah, that's gonna. Please support Politics in Black. You know, they're doing some great work down in Los Angeles and in the nation. So, you know, shout out to Chad and Friday for holding it down, doing some great reporting. So I just want to play this clip real fast, kind of give you the behind the scenes of San Francisco. So let's go to it for the task force meeting. We went down there.
As you can see right now, I don't know, so the crowd can't see this, but we up on the balcony right now. So the chair Moore is actually going back up to the stage now, getting set up as they getting ready to come back to the second half of today. By the way, as y'all know, every single California Reparations Commission hearing is a 2-day hearing from 9 a.m. to 5-ish p.m. every single day. And so this is day 1. So tomorrow is day 2. And so tomorrow, make sure you tune back in. And thank you, Tony, for giving love to the ETM Media family too, because the ETM Media family needs the love. They deserve the love. They are y'all have been historic in the way that y'all have been covering these events.
Yeah, family. There's, you know, and sometimes I'm not trying to be vain or pat us on the back, but seriously, like, there's been no other media source that has covered this reparations movement like we are. I mean, we actually had a build session, family. We had an interview with the great Chris Lodson and Tony Harvey. Who does that? Who does that for our community, right? And then, you know, we had the chairperson who gave her a little love as she was getting ready for, you know, after the break. But yeah, family, so we're working hard, you know, trying to bring this information to the community. So however you guys can support, and we're in the process of starting to shoot this Reparations Now documentary. So if you can support us there, we usually have the link somewhere in our videos that we post up. So just go ahead, support us. So I think that's pretty much it in terms of like the economics and communications part. So we definitely want everybody to have a wonderful day and so forth. But before we do that, you know, we always got to go around the room to have some last words. So I guess we'll kind of start with CEO. Will skip me because I'm pretty much done with what I have to say, and then we'll just kind of go around the room. So I guess CEO, if you want to take the mic.
Real quick, just show up where you can. You know, everybody can't do everything, but you can do one thing. So show up, you know, call in, spread the word, do whatever fits your life, but get on board with reparations.
Bet I'll jump in here. Saturday, May 28th, Oakland. I'm gonna plug it. Saturday, May 28th, Oakland. I'm definitely gonna plug it. Come through, California Reparations Listening Session in Oakland, California Ballroom, 1 p.m. to 4 p.m. There's a link on at CJEC official Twitter. It's on my timeline. It's on, I think it's on everybody here timeline too. So make sure you're out there. And I also want to thank the chair for her amazing work. I want to thank her for her strong advocacy, her strong, just amazing fighting for reparations, fighting for lineage eligibility, fighting for making sure that we get direct compensation and direct financial compensation as well. And I also want to thank the ETM Media family here too. Amazing work, tremendous work. Also want to thank everybody that's doing organizing all around the state. I got my Got Reparations shirt on right now, AB 3121. You already know. I want to give a shout out to Alita in the Bay Area too. Big shout out to Alita, who has been doing amazing organizing down there in the Bay, and got the Black Box campaign going on right now too, with the youth out there collecting testimony. They in the barbershops, they in the beauty salons, they all around, they in the parks and all that. So make sure you check them out at the Black Box campaign. Last thing is, also before the last thing, big shout out to everybody that's in the chat, everybody watching. Make sure you check me out on Twitter this evening to 8 p.m. for the spaces. I got a lot of shout outs. And then last thing though, so I'm looking forward to working on first how we define what types of reparations we all get. I think that's going to be the next year of the commission's work. So I'm looking forward to this process of actually putting the details behind what different types of reparations we all get. And again, that's the next whole year of the commission's work. So I'm looking forward to that. I'm also looking forward to strong communications going forward too. I'm looking forward to having a bunch of people in the LA meeting on, I don't know what the day is in September, but we'll know soon enough. And then I'm also looking forward to strong participation for all of the rest of the commission meeting. Yeah, Jay, I got you, brother. They say, wait, my phone, I got you, my brother. And then I'm also looking forward to just continuing to work with y'all, just continuing this work with everybody here. So big love, big shout out, and I am done.
I just want to thank ETM Media, namely CEO Moya and Kim, for holding space. This is so important to talk about what's going on in the task force and giving the community direct updates. So yes, thank you. And thank you all for what you've done for following this task force and even the work that you guys done before even this task force was impaneled. And thanks to the community for listening. And yeah, thanks Chris and all the organizers. And yeah, I'll just leave it there. Just stay tuned. Our next official hearing is September of this year. But before then, we'll have a gathering. So not a meeting, but a gathering in June, hopefully the first week of June, at the state capitol, where we're going to celebrate the release and publication of our first or interim report, which would be a little bit over than 600 pages that is going to catalog the wide-ranging harms against the descendant community from before 1619 and onward to present day. And so I'm really looking forward to that gathering. And I believe one of the members on the task force stated that this would be the first report on the African American descendant of chattel slavery community, I think, since the Kerner Commission report in the 60s. So it is a historic moment. And to the point of communications, we have a lot of work to do up until June and even in the summer to really get the rest of the state, the United States and the world excited for what's to come, which is reparations for the descendant community.
You're on mute, Moya, but he sent me a note in the private chat. It looks like we do have a caller. I'm willing to yield my time for a caller.
Okay, yeah, caller, I'm gonna put you back on, but we're gonna, if you can, like, minimally say within like hopefully 3 minutes, and I'm not trying to be like the California Task Force.
We're gonna have to cut you off. We're gonna have to cut you off.
But yeah, if you can within the 3 minutes, hopefully say what you need to say. So I'm gonna bring you up on the line. All right. Caller, if you're there, can you say your name and where you're calling from, please?
Yes, my name is Cree. I'm calling from San Diego. I spoke with Chair Moore yesterday in Clubhouse. Again, thank you for the amazing work that you're doing, Kamilah, for sure. And thank you, all you folks at ETM Media, for the great work you're doing. And I am calling in regard to like the model. Like, I know that the task force has voted for the harms-based model. And I think that is going to greatly limit the amount of compensation that can come through. But I think there's an opportunity. I would rather see the national model, and I'd rather see a fractional version of it. And I think that, well, it's already been decided, but I would have rather seen a fractional model of it, because California can't get off the hook of saying that the harms that we occurred here, or I'll use the word Friedman, is not their fault because they didn't come into the union until late in the game. They can't, I don't think they can claim that excuse any more than people who say they came through Ellis Island can say, why should they pay for the effects of slavery since their ancestors weren't here? The California joined the union, and so they got the benefits thereof. There's a lot of benefits to being part of the Union of the United States of America. If you get those benefits, you pay the debts as well. Just like an immigrant, you get the benefits of being in the United States of America, which were built on the backs of our ancestors, slaves, our ancestors. And so you get those benefits, but you also get the debts that are due to the people who built that country. And I think that's the same thing for the state of California entering in late. So I would have rather seen a fractional version of it based on our population. However, if we're going to go with the harms-based model, I would say that the greatest opportunity, this is just my view, the greatest opportunity for the state of California is to address those harms and the non-repetition of them. Because I understand that the draft is just in a very, very rough form right now, but it's the way the DOJ wrote it, and you know who's behind that, DOJ. The way the DOJ wrote the summary of the harms and the recommendations is so vague, and it looks like all of we're going to look into better practices for policing and housing, and it's not specific enough to put penalties, to actual penalties for how it's going to for the people who are repeating all of this caste and racial discrimination, and it's not specific enough to at this point to make it like it's not so hard to win a case, even if there is like a special tribunal. It's not really hard to prove. They don't, because the hurdles so far have been so egregious. We can never get over those hurdles, whether it's the EEOC or the courts. Or it's very difficult to get over those hurdles. So I would hope that some stuff will be put in place so that the hurdles won't be egregious, won't be really almost impossible to get through, and also that it's really specific in terms of preventing the non-repetition. Because if we don't get a non-repetition, then even if we get the funds, the way the economy will be arranged in terms of appraisals and in terms of white flight, the money will be devalued. So I think California has a really great opportunity to set the standard for the nation in the non-repetition and harms, and really stick it to them if they ever do it to us again. And so thank you for taking my call.
Yeah, thank you, Cree, for calling in. Appreciate you.
That was fire.
Thank you.
That was an amazing call.
Yeah, and Kamilah, shout out for you for all the work that you're doing. I mean, you don't have to be doing this. I mean, you could just be sitting high on your queen throne on the task force and not actually building on the community, building with the community, even on some of these other spaces. You don't have to be doing this. So, we really appreciate you. And I'm sure, everybody else in the community definitely appreciates you. So I guess that's pretty much it. We don't have any other calls in the queue right now. If nobody else has anything else to say, I think that's a wrap.
That's pretty much a wrap. Last thing, Kamilah, you did mention your gathering in Sacramento coming up. Now, it's not a traditional meeting, but is it going to be open to the public? Are you going to be pushing to get public involved and to get public out there, since Sacramento is our hometown here at ETM Media? So we want to do what we can to, push it and raise awareness.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's going to be open to the public. We definitely want to get a good number of people there. So absolutely, yes.
All right, you heard it here first, everyone. We want you
Family,
to
we got
descend
we got another we
on
got another
Sacramento.
yeah, we got another caller. So Chris and Kamilah, if you guys got to bounce, y'all can go ahead and bounce.
We're just gonna move inside. It's getting kind of hot in here, so outside.
Okay. So yeah, if you guys have to bounce, you guys can go ahead and bounce. CO.
I already bounced and then came back.
I'm here for it. Let's
Yeah,
go.
Chris, it sounded like you was going to
Y'all see me
Yuba
dropping?
City. You already
Yeah,
back?
I was out of here.
All right, man. We got one more call. The call dropped. Okay, I guess not. All right, so it looks like we're actually out now for real.
All right, Politics and Black at 4. Everybody tune in for that for more information on what's going on with the task force.
Let's tell them where to find that at though. It's at NAASDLA on YouTube. So NAASDLA on YouTube. So if you, I'm not sure there's a link that folks can drop in the chat. But pull up 4 p.m. today, 4 to 5:30. It is Politics and Black at NAASDLA on YouTube.
All right. I think that's about it. So yeah, family, appreciate y'all. Everybody in the chat who came through, who's gonna look at the replay, appreciate y'all.
Go ahead. This is Chad Brown with CJEC and NAASD LA. Hello, Chair Moore, and a very happy birthday to you. We celebrate you today and every day. Good morning to you and to all members of the task force. It's so exciting to see you all together in the same space for the first time. I wish I could be there with you, but I'm happy to see volunteer members from CJEC present in the room. Many of them came a long way to be with you today, which only speaks to the long-standing and unwavering commitment of our community to be involved in this historically important process. I want to start by thanking the 5 members who voted yes to lineage-based reparations at the last meeting. Chair Moore, Vice Chair Brown, Member Scott Lewis, Member Montgomery Stepp, and Senator Bradford, thank you. You stood tall for the Freedmen community last month. We see you, we appreciate you, and we continue to support you. Your votes pushed our people closer to realizing America's long-deferred promise of economic justice, and it will not be forgotten. To the members who voted no to lineage last month, the task force has made a decision which binds you all, and I sincerely hope you have had time to reflect and will be able to move forward with integrity and enthusiasm. There is still much work to do. Today, I wanted to speak about several concerns we have with the actions of certain members. Many of you are now aware that Member Joan Sawyer has introduced a bill in the State Assembly to extend the end date of the task force for 1 year. This was done without consulting his fellow task force members or any of the activists and organizers who have been working on AB 3121 prior to his involvement. He has also not yet spoken about this bill publicly. We want to express our strong opposition to AB 2296, as 2 years is certainly enough time to complete the task force statutory duties. Next, I want to inform Member Joan Sawyer that we took note of his claim that he authored AB 3121. That is not true. Again, we have been working on AB 3121 before it was a bill, and while we appreciate Mr. Joan Sawyer's support as a co-sponsor, he is not responsible for any of the language that appears in the bill. That credit goes to Dr. Shirley Weber and the grassroots activists who have been working on the legislation. I also want to express my own personal offense and anger at Mr. Joan Sawyer's comment last month that some Black people came over in slave ships, others came over in cruise ships, but we're all in the same boat now. I can't think of anything more offensive to say to the Black American community, the descendants of those who were enslaved and built this nation despite being subjected to the most heinous of atrocities. I believe he owes us all an apology. Lastly, I want to commend Chair Moore for bringing attention to the poor performance of the contracted communications firms, Young Communications and AB Partners. My understanding is that these firms have been paid upwards of $1 million, and yet they are woefully delinquent on contracted deliverables to the point of dereliction. To date, there has been little to no communication support provided by these firms to the Black grassroots organizers and media. It is critically important that the task force engage firms that are vested in our economic justice and able to provide the required services. I believe these firms should be replaced and their payments refunded.
I'm sorry to interrupt
I look forward
you
to
in the
seeing
middle
drastic
of your
improvement in this
sentence,
area.
but your
Thank
time
you
is
all
up.
again for your service to the Freedman community, and I'm
Thank
wishing
you
you
so
all
much.
a productive meeting today, and I'm looking forward to today's session.